When large jobs require moving massive amounts of snow, get the work done quickly and efficiently with the Western Pile Driver and all-new Pile Driver XL pusher plows, both featuring Trace Edge technology. These pushers scrape down to the pavement with an advanced cutting-edge system that has independent 2-foot sections that move vertically, oscillate, and trip. Get more jobs done faster with the Western Pile Driver lineup of pusher plows.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott, for the third time. Kevin Stonitsch, owner of Adirondack Customs and Bison FMS LLC. Good morning, brother. How we doing?
We are doing excellent, Dave. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing fantastic. This morning we got rapping back and forth about snow and ice before the snow actually kicked off. We started the show a couple minutes late because we got rapping back and forth about snow and what it takes to build a snow business and what it looks like, whether you're aggregating the business, whether you're self-performing the business, however you build your business out. We were rapping back and forth a little bit about that, talking about that. And so that was an interesting conversation that we're going to pick up here. But so Kevin, you've been in the snow and ice industry. You're going on year number 9. You're a CSP from SIMA. You've built this business. You have a passion for it. You were in business since I think it was about 2007, building custom homes. And somewhere along the lines, you got into snow.
That's correct.
Why did you do that to yourself?
So I have a friend of a friend in the lumber industry, and he called me up and he said, listen, I got a buddy and he does commercial snow. Are you interested? And I said, what in the world are you talking about? And he said, well, you plow driveways. I said, yeah, everybody plows driveways. There's no money in it. There's no challenge in it. And he said, well, talk to this guy. And it was Scott McDonald of North Country Snow and Ice, also a SIMA member. Long story short, year 1, we're plowing out of trucks and we're salting out of 5-gallon pails. Took on a few sites. Liked the challenge of it, liked the unpredictability of it, liked the kind of first responder feel that you get by stepping into a truck, stepping into a loader, and making a site go from absolutely unsafe to absolutely safe for their clientele, being there for your business partner. And we loved it ever since.
That's awesome. I love it. So you're up in the woods in New York.
Yeah, so we're the actual real upstate of New York. So many people, actually, my daughter just had this at school the other day, where somebody said, oh, you're from upstate New York? She goes, yeah. So what do you mean, Westchester County? And it's like, no, you're a good 200 miles short of us. The Adirondack Park is the nation's largest state park. It's 6 million acres of public and private land mix. We've got a unique topography, a unique snow situation, and unique regulations that make us different from anywhere else in the country.
Wow, that's pretty cool. When I think of New York, I think about alligator boots and gold chains, but you seem like you're, out there in Carhartts and hunting gear, and you don't live the typical New York lifestyle. I mean, when you think of New York, I'm just gonna say, like, even if you're in different parts, I always at least relate New York to the city.
Mm-hmm. And you're right, because that's where most of the population is. But we're probably the exact opposite of what the typical person thinks of when they think of New York City.
Right. You guys go hunting?
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's muzzleloader season right now. So some of the guys are talking about cutting out of work early on Friday so they can get an extra half day in the woods. So, yeah.
So are you a hunter?
I am. I'm a hunter and a fisherman. I do as many things as possible outdoors. I love it.
So you're an outdoorsman. So you like going camping and trekking and rucking, and you like doing all this stuff?
Oh, yeah. And actually, the Adirondack Park has a club It's called the 46ers Club. I am not one yet, but in the park, there are 46 mountains that come over 4,000 feet of elevation. I know it's not that impressive to guys from the West Coast, but on average, you're climbing around 2,500 feet of elevation to get to the top of these peaks. And if you do all 46, then you get your special badge and you get a special recognition with the Adirondack Mountain Club.
Wow. So you're a hiker. You're a mountain climber.
I am. I've not completed my 46. I will get it before I die. But yeah, I am a hiker and a mountain climber.
Our good friend John Crandall is a mountaineer.
Really?
Did you
I'll
not
have
know
to
that?
see if I could get him out for one. No, I didn't know that.
Oh, listen, this guy has John has scaled like I don't know if it's every mountain, but it feels like every mountain in like the New England area. Like, I mean, this guy has done some serious. This guy is a serious mountaineer.
So you're the runner currently, and you're about to do Ironman, and John's the mountain climber. So I have to figure out something that makes me unique then.
All right, listen, you'll get it. So that's a little bit. So that's fun. So that's in it. You get into snow because they said, hey, let's do it. You start with some 5-gallon pails and some plows. And I just saw on social media you released this new brand, Bison Facility Management Services.
That's correct. So starting about 3 years ago, we had the genesis from our customers that they really wanted to engage us year round. And our core business in Adirondack Customs is residential home building. So that didn't really line up with where the commercial aspect came in. So 3 years ago, we started looking into branding names and looking into partnerships with some of the local companies. And Bison was born out of it. The tagline, which, hey, I thought of it, stumbled on it, turned into the storm. A bison is the only animal that actually turns into a storm and pushes its way through. So I thought it was a little bit of self-marketing.
Yeah, I love that. I had the opportunity to speak at the SIMA symposium for a few minutes a couple of years back, and Martin kicked it off with turning into the storm, right, with the bison. Martin Tirado, CEO of SIMA. And, I followed that up, but I love that the bison is the only animal, I believe, that turns into the storm. It walks into the storm. It doesn't walk away from the storm. It doesn't hide from the storm. It goes from it, goes through it. And so you've built this company that says, bring on the challenge. Let's go. Let's get our bootstraps pulled up.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we do. I mean, we built the genesis of our company and the core of it from being there for our customers, no matter what they want. As an example, our largest in-house customer 3 years ago had an issue with some snow and ice coming off of an addition onto their greenhouses. And in the middle of the night, we got called up to come up and save the facility, basically. The roof was under the threat of collapse. Another customer called us up and simply said, do you do this? And the answer was yes. Do we normally perform tree trimming work? No. But you field enough of those phone calls, Dave, you know that.
Yep.
You end up looking at it and saying, my customer who's a good customer needs me and they want to partner with me on this. So you start saying yes, and you start seeing where the market's at, and then you respond to the market. And that's where Bison comes from.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you're expanding and you're growing out. And I saw you had some trucks of heavy iron rolling into your shop and your yard, and you're filling the space up, and you're making some big capital purchases, and you're ready to take on winter's toughest winter storms.
Yeah, so we actually expanded a lot this year. We traditionally had about a 45-mile radius of our home base. And this year, if you know New York, we've gone from Albany all the way up to Plattsburgh. So we're going from the Canadian border about 150 miles south to the capital in Albany. And that's just to meet client needs. They've been asking us to take over problem areas for other contractors. And what better thing to do than to be there for your customer, right?
Yeah, I can say that's similar to how we've grown our business in the West Coast, right? Our footprint, our area sees, between 2 and about 156 inches of snow, depending on the region, right? We've got some pretty deep snow in there. But that's the same thing. It's the same way that we built our our national footprint was actually just started local. Like it didn't, we didn't have a dream or an idea to become a company that serviced across the U.S. We really had this very just small focus on working here. And, we grew that up to 500-600 sites, all self-performing, which we still self-perform to this day. And we looked at that and we said, okay, great. And our customers kept saying, can you take on this? And 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 that organic growth is one, it's hard to manage, but two, you as an entrepreneur, you just don't say no, right? So you keep growing and you keep pushing the envelope, and you keep looking at new ways to grow your business and reinvent yourself. I would say I've reinvented myself 5 or 6 times over this entrepreneurial journey. So I love the fact that, you're in this business and you started out as a custom home builder, and then, 9 years ago you said, hey, I'm jumping into this thing full feet and I'm going into snow. And now snow is a really big part of what you guys do. You still build custom homes, right? You're still doing that, and that's still happening. But in the wintertime, you guys really just turn into a big snow monster, and you're going for it. Now, for plans of growth, will you ever take over or work in the entire state of New York? Will you expand into New Jersey, or what are you thinking for the future?
I'm thinking for the future that the eastern half of New York will be our home, from New York City way on up. Western New York is a different animal. You and I were rapping off each other about the differences in the market, how difficult it is to expand across a national footprint. Right now, with the personnel we have and the experience we have, we're not cut out to be full-time in like the Buffalo market, Rochester market. They're very different. But I'd be lying if I didn't say if the right opportunity came along, the right customer base, that we wouldn't take advantage of it. For instance, today, 2 of our crews are over in Vermont servicing. We got called by a client that we do a lot of work for in New York. And they said, hey, we've got a real problem here. We have to fire off the subcontractor that's over there. Can you come help us out? So 2 of our crews are spending the week over in Vermont getting their sites in order. But in that, when you said we don't say no, right, as entrepreneurs, when you're there as a partner for your customer, you find a way.
Yeah.
So for instance, you brought up John Crandall, and I love John, fantastic businessman. Rarely do I go against the advice of people that are smarter than I am, and John is smarter than I am. We had a conversation 2 years ago. I was asking John about expanding my company and bringing on a satellite location. And Martin Torado had introduced us, and we were just kind of having that first initial casual conversation, and John took it deep. And I laid out my plans to him. And John goes, I don't normally give advice, but. And I said, well, John, I asked you to give me advice. And he goes, well, I wouldn't do it. Now that forced me to go back to the drawing board and say, well, if a guy that's as successful as John, as qualified, as smart as John is saying, don't do this, I better look into the why. So I did. And there wasn't enough customer base, frankly, to do a traditional satellite facility. I said, well, my customer's still asking me to do this, right? I've got several of them. How can I do this without the capital expenditure, without the risk of a traditional satellite facility? So what we ended up doing is partnering with a new customer. They had a large facility that they needed taken care of right in the center of this expansion footprint. Got them under contract to allow us to put up brine tanks, a salt bin, and allow us to store in connexes the extra equipment we need to equip a satellite facility, but not have the capital expenditure of a long-term lease, build out of a traditional brick and mortar, that sort of thing. So we ended up doing a hybrid where we could take on the expanded footprint, but not have the capital expenditure of a traditional brick and mortar. And I'd be lying if I told you there wasn't a lot of risk in that, but it worked. And it's now worked 4 more times. So we're in markets that we wouldn't necessarily go into if we had to have dedicated offices, shop facilities, large brick and mortar footprint. But we're able to get into new markets and then start to gain market share by having a limited overhead model, by doing these smaller satellite facilities on existing company or client-owned facilities. So it's getting creative, in short.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the creativity. I love the thinking outside of the box, the relationship that you build with your customer. And essentially what you're doing is you're creating a hub site, right? You're creating a hub that you build off of and work out of, so that that hub location, however many square feet or acres it is, depending on how you look at it. Some guys look at square foot, some of them look at them by acres, but as you're looking at what you're servicing, that becomes a hub. So you service that client, they get this incredible service. They've got the attention of basically a shop right on their facility, which who's not going to love? And then you're able to dispatch out and service the local locations around that to build up your book of business and take market control in markets that are smaller and maybe inhabitable from the branch standpoint. So you're able to grow your footprint, you're able to grow your business, take care of your customers, and scale in a way that maybe other people aren't scaling.
Exactly correct. Because one of the issues, if you looked on a map and you looked at the eastern half of New York, right, you'd have up by the Canadian border, you'd have Plattsburgh. Well, then you got a giant dead zone for 50 miles. There's actually there's one utility hub site in the center, and that's the only site. So nobody's going to expand 50 miles and put a brick and mortar in, right?
Right.
There's just too much of a gap. You can't expect to go from your core business either and go 50 miles up to the next city. But you can stage equipment on the customer's dedicated site. We've got an 8-acre site up there. Customer loves the idea that the loaders are stored there, that they start there, right? So
Yep.
essentially, without having the cost to the customer of dedicated on-site equipment, they have 90% of that function because we're always starting there. We're always coming back. So they get that extra level of care. But we get the free use of their space to stage all our equipment, stage our extra manpower, to stage the extra supplies to be able to service that Plattsburgh area. And in a couple of years, when we get more of a market share, will we get a traditional brick and mortar? Absolutely. But it's a nice win-win for the customer.
Yeah, that is nice. Now you're a guy that's primarily anti-aggregator, anti-broker, anti-subcontractor. Right? I mean, that's
You might call me a control freak.
You're a control freak. So you don't like the idea of working for a general contractor. You don't like the idea of working for a general contractor. You want to own the relationship straight on. And you also don't like utilizing a subcontractor in the work that you perform for your clients. Is that right? You want to be as direct as possible.
I always want to be direct as possible. I don't dislike aggregators or GCs. What I dislike is when our values don't align. So when I was a younger businessman, I struggled with some GCs because frankly, I didn't know myself well enough. I stood for certain things and they stood for other things. What I'll say is when we were rapping with each other about the difficulties of expanding across various markets, essentially bringing subs in, you made the comment of subs are the hardest thing, the worst thing in the business relationship. You're exactly right. I am a subcontractor in a number of things. I also subcontract out to people. And it's the hardest thing because frankly, you lack control. And when you lack control without a high level of detail, you run into issues. Because you know as well as I do, you can draft a contract as strong as you want. You can put as many things on the scope of work as you want. But if you're not in alignment with the person on the other end of the phone, stuff's going to happen. And it makes it really difficult when it's your word out to that customer saying, I'm going to do this job this way. It's going to be happening. And then it doesn't. That's really my issue.
And it happens in building homes,
Mm-hmm.
building buildings, subcontracting snow removal, working with arborists in landscaping. Like there's always that miss. And I think that it's, there's this interesting philosophy out there that says, and we'll just call it an aggregator for the sake of this particular show. But there's this thought out there that the aggregator is the bad guy. Mm-hmm. Like the aggregator is the one who's wrong. And to me, what that sounds like is a business owner who didn't take personal responsibility for the decisions that they made. That's what it sounds like to me. So everybody who's out there and says, oh, this is the clown show and don't work for the aggregator and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. To me, that's a cop-out. To me, that's a victim mentality, right? Because, wait a minute, what do you mean that an aggregator preyed on somebody who didn't know what they were doing? If you didn't know what you were doing, why did you get in business? Why would you ever go into business if you didn't know what you were doing? Why would you ever go into business if you didn't know how to price the work? Why would you ever sign a 67-page contract if you didn't read the terms? And all of a sudden, this is the fault of the aggregator? Are you
Do you have a sore
smoking
spot
crack?
there?
No. Listen, I don't have a sore spot. I just think it's ridiculous. Because I believe in extreme ownership, right? Like in everything in my life. If I signed the piece of paper, then I'm going to take ownership of it. Like I believe in this philosophy of a beer and a handshake type relationship, right? Like I work with contractors and subs today with no paperwork. I'll do a straight beer and a handshake deal. You're going to take care of me. I'm going to take care of you. That's how I believe business is done, right? And I believe that if you said you're going to show up and you're a man of your word, you're going to show up. If you agreed on a price, you're going to execute for the price. You are in control of signing that paper and taking on that agreement. That is what you have agreed to. I have taken on work for customers and got destroyed. But I'll tell you what, I've always finished the work.
So the way I phrase it is, everybody's an adult. I'm not your mother. I'm not your father. Nobody's holding a gun to your head. I'm not responsible for your mistakes, and you're not responsible for mine.
Yep.
If you can enter into a business relationship that way, things tend to go pretty smooth.
Yeah.
But where things get muddy is we're all human, right? If we could remove the humanness from every situation, it would go a lot smoother. So I'll be honest with you. I worked with some companies in the snow industry since the year I started business. So 9 years, right? And they come back year after year. I just was talking with a rep from the East Coast 2 days ago and saying, where's my contracts? I'm expecting to see them. And they were a little behind on some stuff. They said, yep, we're going to get it to you. No problem. There's also some people that, for lack of a better term, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. There's some people I just won't do business with again. There's some terms I won't agree to. But we're all adults here. Whether you're an aggregator, whether you're a sub, whether you're a self-performer, whether you're simply a client rep who's signing contracts that they shouldn't, you're hired to do the job. You're hired to be a qualified person. And if you're going to do the job, if you're going to take the work, it's your obligation to know what you're signing. It's your obligation to know what it means. It's your obligation to be a professional. If you're not a professional, don't play in that field.
You know, I think a lot of this is just my thought, but building a business pre-internet, which is what I've done, is I've been in business since pre-internet, right? Like, and when I started, you know, I've been doing snow removal for 22 years. I've been an entrepreneur for 27, 28 years, right? I've been doing this for a while. And I started out in the world where we had a fax machine and we had an office phone, and you know, like we didn't even have cell phones back then, right? Like we didn't even have that cell capacity. So like I started out there, and you know, it was a simple way to build business. But what I learned was, when I started mowing lawns, I didn't know really what the cost to mow a lawn was. I didn't know what the profit was. But what I knew was that when I bought a truck, it cost me $350 a month. And I knew that truck had to make me profit. And I was like, nothing then, right? So I was like, okay, well, you know, if my truck cost me $350 a month for the truck payment, and I want to make $50 profit on my truck, and I'm going to work 20 days in the month, I have to make sure that every estimate includes $20 for the truck. Right? I have to look at my guys and I have to say, okay, I'm going out to mow a lawn. I'm going to set a timer, and I'm going to time how long it takes me to cut the grass. And then I'm going to time how long it takes me to trim the lawn. And then I'm going to time how long it takes me to blow the property off. And I'm going to time each one of those things as if I'm just an average worker, not working at an owner's super inflated speed. And I'm going to say, this is my cost. And then if I take that and I say, okay, we've done 50 jobs and I've timed 50 jobs and I know how long 50 jobs take me, then I know I can take the square footage of each one of the elements in that job and I can build out a price that tells me how I'm going to be profitable. Because I can take my labor, I can take my company overhead, I can take all of these pieces and I can put them in, and it gives me a cost. And I had to figure that out. And I figured that out by screwing jobs up.
Yep.
Right? And it's the same in the snow. Like, I'll be honest, when I started in the snow, I got my first contract with Kohl's through US Maintenance. I didn't even have I didn't even have a plow truck, okay? And they signed me up for every Kohl's in Washington State and every Rite Aid in Washington State. And all of a sudden, I had like 35 properties. And I didn't even have a plow truck yet. And the first time it snowed, like, we put that blade on the ground and there was like 10 of us sitting around it in the Kohl's parking lot and it was scraping on the ground. And we're like, is that right? Should it be doing that? There was no Google to tell us. Right? And we just accepted whatever price they gave us. I don't know what it was, $100 probably. But you know, we made money. We actually made enough money to figure out what we had done wrong. And what we did, the same thing, time it. How long did it take on site? So we figured out a production rate, 50,000 square feet an hour with an 8-foot blade. And I think that is what gets missed with the internet, because it's easy to go on any social platform and just say, hey guys, what should this cost? Hey guys, what should this cost? Well, my hourly is this, and and it's so different. Like, I love what you said about you built a business based off of using a client location at a hub. I don't have the expense of a brick and mortar. You know what that did? That completely reduced your overhead. That completely reduced your ability, to spend in that market, which makes you more profitable. And it also gives you the ability to reduce cost if you want. You can raise it or whatever you want, but you can play at a different field than the guy who might be right next door with the brick and mortar shop, because you don't have all those expenses. That's never taken into account when you're looking at your P&L, your budget, and the way that you do business. And so I think what happens with the internet is we're so quick to jump on the internet and figure out what Dr. Google said we're going to price this job at.
Yeah.
That we've lost the art of estimation.
Well, I'd say the art of estimation, but also critical thinking. I mean, what you're talking about, you failed numerous times. I'm sure if I asked you to list them all off, we'd be here for a couple hours, right? If you asked me
days.
how many times, okay, a couple days. If you asked me, we'd be here all day, right? And then my wife would come in and she would say a whole nother round of stuff I forgot, right?
Right.
But the failures didn't stop us. The failures taught us. Failure is actually one of the biggest teachers you can have in life. I mean, if you're smart enough, I'm traditionally not, to learn from somebody else's experience and apply it to your own world, that's awesome, because it can save you from a lot of heartache and a lot of trouble. I usually am an experience-based learner. I have to do it to learn where my shortfalls, where my issues are, the things I have to correct. But in doing so, you learn, if you're smart, and then entrepreneurs are very smart, you learn how to apply that lesson to something new. That while the exact circumstance or the exact project that you're doing is different, you can apply those concepts. So in my home building business, you know how I got into it? Very simple. I took the work that nobody else could do or wanted to do, and I found a way to make it profitable. When I was in my 20s, all this gray didn't exist, right? The question I got asked, number one, when I'm walking into there was, are you sure you know how to do that? How old are you? And I say, don't worry about it. Have you done it before? Yep. Now, I never tell them I never did that exact thing before, right? You have to do everything for the first time once.
Right.
But if they dug down into it and said, well, the first time I did a metal roofing job, have you done roofing? Well, yeah. Have you done metal roofing? Well, no, but I've gone through the training course. I've applied shingle roofs. I know what I'm doing. I'll guarantee the work. Okay. But then you can take one type of metal roofing and apply it to other types of metal roofing. So the first time that I did a snap lock versus doing a corrugated, just applied the lessons I learned from doing the first corrugated job. When you do the first Walgreens or you do the first gas station, can you take those lessons on your production rates, on issues that you run into, and apply it to a different class of site? Absolutely. Can you take the lessons that you learned from that killer storm that prevented you from meeting your service parameters, that prevented you from meeting your cycle times, and apply it to inform your numbers better moving forward? Absolutely. Give you an example. Mike McCarron from ImageWorks. I'm pretty sure you know Mike
Yeah, I know
from
Mike.
Sima.
Mike's going to be on the show.
Yeah. So I thought I was hot stuff. I had figured out my numbers in the snow to 3 points past the decimal in some cases, 2 points on most of it, but 3 points past. I'm talking with Mike at the Sima roundtable 2 years ago, and in 5 minutes he tore my numbers apart. He's like, "You don't know about this. You haven't considered that." And I'm going, "Who the heck is this guy?" By the time I left him a half an hour later, he had me working 5 and 6 points past the decimal to know my numbers for production rates, costs, to consider my CapEx, all these different things that I had never even dreamed of stepping into. And what it did, and one of the values I see in Sima and other organizations, the transparency made me a better entrepreneur, made me a better business owner, because now I know my numbers better. So when I'm a sub for somebody else or I'm pricing a job for myself, I know those exact costs. I know to the penny what I'm going to spend. I know to fractions of pennies for smaller sites what I'm going to spend. I know exactly down to 5 points past the decimal what those brand new Case 321s cost me and what I can expect out of them per hour to generate for me in revenue, and exactly how many hours on average I'm going to get out of it. If I don't know those numbers, I don't know if I'm profitable. And if I don't know I'm profitable, why in the world am I in business?
Yeah. I'm a big believer in this, and I do the same thing. I have my numbers broken down. I believe that the reason why so many contractors fail, and it's not just this idea that happens in snow and ice, it happens in every single industry across the board. And it's because you have so many incredible, talented craftsmen who are great at technically framing, plowing a parking lot, installing plumbing, pouring concrete, but they don't have the education, the training, or the mental capacity, or the even want and the desire to know the numbers of the business. And the most important thing that you have to know in the business is everything is a mathematical equation. Every piece of it. If you want to prevent failure, then what you do is you become the very, very best at math. And I'll tell you that one of the things I do in my coaching practice is I work with entrepreneurs in the seasonal businesses like snow and landscape. And always the first thing, what's your cost of acquisition? Do you know? What's your close rate? Do you know? What's your average job size? Do you know? These are mission critical numbers to understand in your business. And then I want to build an entire budget for my company, even if I do snow in a heavy snow market like yours. And I want December, January, February, March with zero sales income. Even though I know it's going to snow and you're going to have some predictability, you're going to have some de-icing, but I want you to build a business on 8 months. And I want all of your materials and all of your labor and all of your costs spread out across 12 months. So you've got expenses that drill across those 4 months with zero income. And that discipline, what happens when you build that discipline is you learn how to carry money forward. And then you learn how to have a winter season where all your expenses have been covered in spring, summer, and fall. And now that snow money is 100% profit. And
you touched on that. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
You touched on a really important point, especially with the sub-market. There's a huge difference between being a subject matter expert and being a businessman. There's a lot of people that know how to move snow, pour asphalt, dig ditches. They can be amazing in those machines, but they do not have a sweet clue what it takes to actually run a business 12 months of the year. When you're talking about your customer acquisition cost, when you're talking about your target market or any of the other metrics that we analyze, their eyes glaze over. And those are the people that don't know their numbers, that sign on the dotted line and say, I'll do it, and then come back at you and say, I can't do it. Those are the guys that fail because, well, people, right? Because they don't know that numbers are the most important thing. You have to take that subject matter expert, right? You're in the market for a reason. You know the market, you know how to do the work, and you have to pair it with knowing your numbers. When you put those two things together, you'll be successful. If you don't have both of those things, you can't be successful. If you don't know your numbers, you fall flat on your face. If you don't know what you're doing to pull off the work, you fall flat on your face. If you don't have those two things, you got nothing.
That's right. And at the end of the day, you're going to hear, people are going to say, you're a good guy. And there's people who are going to say, you're a bad guy. Mm-hmm. And the truth of the matter is, I believe whether you're doing janitorial services, whether you're doing IT services, or whether you're plowing snow, if you have agreed to a contract, you honor the contract. Mm-hmm. If you lose, you lose. But you honor what you agree to. Mm-hmm. And you do that until you cannot do it anymore. Because that builds character. That builds strength. That builds an indomitable spirit. Right? I know that when I was servicing Bank of America sites for U.S. maintenance in 2006, and they stiffed me for $26,000 at the end of the season, I knew that I was never going to work for those people ever again in my life. Right? Mm-hmm. I knew it. And so what do I have to do to be successful? I have to check all the boxes and I have to understand what I'm getting into. And I think that's what it comes down to. And the more that we have the internet, the more that we have shotgun pricing, the more that we just look at a thing and, all right, I think that's $300 to plow that site, and it's going to be $150 to salt it.
Mm-hmm. Well, look what we did last year. You called me for that RFP, right? We bid out a few states for you.
Yep.
And we were the only ones, I think, you and I, that actually bid it out per site and actually ran the numbers based on the size and the type of site. Everybody else just threw a number against the wall they thought would work. Now, we didn't get the work. That's okay. But we knew if we got it, we could succeed doing it.
Yep.
And the jobs you get are just as important as the jobs you don't. And if you don't price it profitably, what's the point of taking it? For instance, there's a company that I'm aware of, some of the higher ups, they'll remain nameless. I asked the owner at one point, he's no longer in the industry. I said, what's your overhead? Now, this person is doing, at the time, over $20 million in snow a year. And he says, I don't know. So how do you not know? How do you not know exactly what your overhead is day to day? He says, I don't know. But he got confused because he came out of the subject matter expert market, just like I did, right? You're good at what you do. Doesn't mean you're a good businessman. And he got margin confused with revenue. He got profit confused with revenue. He had a lot of revenue. But when talking to some of his managers after they left the company, they were taking on landscaping work and snow work where their overhead consumed 85%, sometimes a little bit more, of what that contract was worth. And if you are spending 85% in overhead, you're not making any money. I don't care how big it is. If you're self-performing and your margin is only 15%, best case scenario, you're not profitable. And this guy is a $22 million snow market, did not know what his overhead was, but yet he would farm contracts out the door.
The thing that you want to do is you really want to make it simple for your team, and you really want to make it simple for the organization. And what you do is, I think it's about being transparent with the team And I think everybody in the company should understand where profit is and where it lies. And let's just say that you're self-performing the work. Well, I know that if I'm self-performing the work, I want to create just a very simple pie chart. And I want to say, if I'm self-performing the work, my labor fully burdened is going to be about 40%. That's just about, out of every dollar I earn, that's about what's going to go into that. Okay, I understand that, right? And then that's my payroll number. And when I understand my payroll number, I understand how much money I have left. Then I've got equipment and expenses. Maybe that's 10 or 12%. Okay, I've got to chalk that up, call it 12% for my equipment expenses. Then I've got all my office overhead, and that's another 12%. Now I'm at 64%. There's only 35% left, right? And if I want to say 10% of that is my bottom line for profit, 10% is like the goal everybody's always trying to hit, right? I don't want to hit 10%. I want to hit like 20. So that means I only have 15% in my allocation. And I got to understand those numbers, and I got to understand how they're broken down. And that's where so many people miss, is they don't understand what they want their profit to be. And I believe you have to start with your profit first. You have to say, I want 20% and I want to do 2 million. So I want to put 400,000 away at the end of the year.
Yeah. In our first conversation with that RFP, that came up forefront from both of us. This is what you want to make as the GC on that project.
Yep.
And the transparency on that is amazing. And it has to happen across the board.
Yep.
Because, for instance, one of the people that was my boss growing up tried to tell me the secret of how to build a profitable house. And his secret was, take the material list for the house, multiply it by 2.4, and you can build the house and put money away in the bank when you're done. I said, well, how does that work? What happens if they spend $30,000 in granite countertops, or they change the siding out? And he said, well, it usually works. And he came out of the 80s in Jersey when they were building houses hand over fist, and he made some money and put some money away. But you can't simplify it that much, right? You can't just boil something down and give somebody a magic formula that works that simply, right? If you and I compared numbers on what our overhead structure is, what our customer acquisition cost is, what you pay for a truck on the West Coast versus what I pay, what you pay in insurance on a truck, it's going to be different numbers. One of the lessons that I love in being in the snow industry versus construction as a comparative, there's much more transparency of how to run your numbers in the snow industry than there ever is in construction. And I love that the industry is doing that, because moving forward, the industry is changing so fast, technology is changing so fast, you really have to know your numbers better than anybody else in your market in order to maintain consistent profitability. If you don't know your numbers, if you're not the best at them in your market, you'll never take that market.
That's right. It's about the numbers. And you know what, when you understand the numbers, and everybody has this idea, this plan, but when you understand those numbers, it prevents you from being that casualty of war. And it's not, and I like to say this is truly, like, I think this is the best advice that anybody can get. And when it comes back to like the work that we were bidding together, I said, hey, listen, I want to make 20%. That's the number I told you. I said, I want to make 20%. You put it together. That's what I'm going to put on this. That's what I need to do this job. And we broke out who's responsible is or what. And I think, that's me understanding where I need to be and what I need to be fair to win the client. And, everything has to mesh together. Right. So, but I look at that and I say, as you're going through this process, those numbers, those plans, those budgets, those P&Ls, those prevent you from being that person who's going to lose at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And the true clown is only the person who doesn't know the numbers. Because
or the person that refuses to learn.
That is the truth. And the best advice that you can have is stop looking at the Facebook Snowplow Mafia page for your pricing. Stop going into, snowplow pricing for your pricing. When you drop that line in there and you say, here's a picture of my parking lot and I've got 1 acre and it's a church and blah, 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 or whatever, I'm going to charge $200 to plow it. What would you guys charge? And 99,000 people respond on the thing. And every one of them has a different price, right?
Mm-hmm.
The truth is, if you want to go there, go there after you've done your bid and your takeoffs and your numbers. I never want to look at any number. I don't want to look at any budget number. I don't want to look at any number until I've actually broken down the Excel sheet and I've come up with my own cost. Because I don't want to be influenced. The thing is that we are so easily influenced by outside parameters that even if I was working with you, and all the time I've done it, if you and I went out to a job and I looked at a job and you said, Dave, this job is going to cost 150 grand. That number would be in my head and I'd be thinking, how's he gonna do that? Where's he gonna do that? What did it, right? I'd be going through this process. And when I came out with my numbers, that number that you gave me would actually impact and influence what I was going to bid.
Yeah, you're entirely right.
So I don't want that.
No.
I want to come up independent. I want to say, don't tell me anything. Keep it secret. And then I want to come up with my number. And then I'll say, hey, Kev, what'd you get on this? And then if our numbers are close, it's like, all right. If our numbers are far off, then I would love to learn. Well, what did you think here? And what did you, where were you at? And what was your efficiency? And, that way you've done all of the creative work that it took to come up based on your experience. And you've got a number that you can execute the work at. You can't just throw numbers at the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens. Yeah.
Another interesting exercise you can do? It's tough because in the snow industry, how many qualified subcontractors do you have in a market, right? So probably a little easier in the construction industry. You can call 6 qualified plumbers. But if you pull in the numbers in the construction industry and you get a bid based off your scope of work for, say, plumbing a house, and they all come within 3%. Well, guess what? You've done your scope of work really well, haven't you? Because if the qualified subs are telling you it's going to cost within a little plus or minus of what you think it's going to cost, then you've done your job right. If you start seeing numbers that vary wildly, then you start saying, well, why is that? Right? Did this guy bid out putting in 2 tubs and the other guy bid in putting in 1? Did this guy bid in radiant heat versus doing baseboard? So in the snow industry, for instance, I've got a friend out in the middle part of New York, and the site that they bid is an industrial hub, varied from 443,000 to 1.2 million. Now you can't tell me that everybody that bid that site was qualified or everybody was including the same thing. You can't have that much variance on that site. Think of it as a distribution hub. So when you're seeing that kind of variance from subcontractors, you as an owner, me as an owner can step back and go, okay, well, why are we seeing this kind of variance? Now we have to account for a couple things. I'm not going to ask you what you make a year. I frankly don't care, but I guarantee you it's a different number than what I'm happy with as my salary for a year, right? Your numbers are going to be different based on what you expect to make for 365 days of input versus mine. So it means your overhead is going to be different than mine. Just like the guy that prefers to plow with 10-year-old loaders is going to have a different number for his CapEx for his machines than I am when I'm buying new equipment. So there's going to be a little variance in the numbers, but there shouldn't be 300% different, right? Why did one guy come in at 440 and another guy come in at 1.2?
Yep.
You understand where I'm driving at? That if you see numbers that vary wildly as a GC, as an aggregator, as an owner, you can check yourself first and say, is my scope of work good? Is my expectation clearly outlined? And then you can go back and kind of use it as self-analysis to say, well, is my sub really qualified if the number is drastically off what everybody else is sending to me? And on that example, the bulk of the bids, they collected 10 bids. 8 of them came within $800,000 and $1 million. So it tells you that the guy that was bidding 440 has no idea what he's doing.
Yep.
Right. And the guy that bid 1.2 probably said, this is my effort money. If I get it, I want a little premium on top, because he doesn't really want it.
And then you have to look at that, and I think you look at that and you say, you ask the guy with 440, and he says, well, man, listen, I've got 2 loaders. I own them free and clear. Me and my son are going to do the work, and we're not going to do another site here the rest of the year. We're going to put 100,000 into salt, and we're going to each walk away with 180,000 a piece, and that's all the work we're doing for the rest of the year, and we're going fishing.
Yeah. And if that's the case, that's a great scenario. But if you don't ask that question, then you don't dive into the why behind it. And see, where a lot of people, I think, on my end of the industry, because I'm small potatoes, where they have an issue with the aggregators is they see the numbers don't represent what the work is. Because that same guy could be a dude that says, well, yeah, you're 27 acres of pavement. I'm going to do them with my 2 plow trucks. And you say, well, when it's snowing an inch an hour in the Utica market, how in the world are you going to keep up with 27 acres with 2 trucks? Right? If you don't ask the why, I mean, you can speak to this as well as I can. In our journey, if you don't ask the question why, oftentimes you set yourself up for failure. If you don't ask for the why behind, he's talking about these costs coming in, your client mentioning a number that it influences us. What I find when a client mentions a number is my immediate first response is, well, where'd you come up with that number? What's driving that number? Where's your expectation? Right?
So,
because that tells you a lot about where they're coming from.
I have worked with aggregators, and I will still work with aggregators today. Like, that might sound silly to you, but
not at all.
In the West Coast market, I work with a couple of aggregators, and I do $2.5 million a year with one aggregator individually. And I service about 144 locations for this aggregator. And I've been working with this aggregator for probably a decade. Now, I self-perform this book of business, so I'm not pushing it down to a third layer. I won't say I self-perform all of it. I probably sub out 15 sites that I can't get to. They're just too far away from me, right? I got to take a ferry, and they're on an island, and it's just I can't do it, right? I just can't get there. But I've been working with the same subs out there forever. But what I do is to ensure that my price is right, because I know that he has to eat too, and that's important to me, right? Because I appreciate the relationship. I appreciate the book of business that he's got. And so what I do is I look at my cost of acquisition, and I say, okay, my self-performed cost of acquisition for a client for a single location is $1,000. How did I come up with that? Well, I know that, the cost of a lead is about $150 if I pay for it on Google. I know that if we close at a 30% close rate, I've spent $450 just on leads to get there. I know that my time to go out and visit the site is an hour. I know that drive time back and forth is usually an hour. And I know that it's going to take our team about a half an hour to put it together. So at that rate, plus payroll taxes, plus the cost of infrastructure, plus the cost of fuel, plus the $25 marketing brochure that we're going to give them when we show up on site, is $1,000. I know that's just what it cost me. Of course, I want multiple sites, but I don't always get them. So if I say, the aggregator comes to me and he says, okay, this is the price that I've got for the work, then I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to base that against my production rate, but I'm going to back out the costs that it would cost me to acquire and win the work, because I don't have to do it. And then I take a formula and I say, you know what I love about working with the aggregator? Because I love working with this guy. And you know what I love about it? I don't have to deal with any of the client. All I have to do is just report in the app. And as long as I actually report in his freaking app and do it right, like, I get paid. I don't have any problem. And I'll tell you, he's been late on payment probably 2 or 3 times every year. And he calls me and he'll say, hey, I needed to pay another sub that I owed $145,000 to. Can I hold yours for 20 days and pay him? And I said, yeah, that's fine. No big deal. Because I appreciate the transparency and the relationship. But I back out the cost, because when I have to deal with that customer direct, I've got to have my own software. I've got to have my own software that I'm paying for. I've got to have my own team managing. I've got to be on point with the calls. I got to do all this extra work. That's about 18%. That's about what it cost. And with him, I don't have to do any of that. So you know what I actually like about it is, I actually like that I get to show up, I get to do the work. I don't have to do the management. I don't have to do the sale. It's why I've been working with the guy for 10 years.
Yeah. And actually, your number is not that different from mine. Mine's 20%. Because the way I look at it is, I'm a GC. I know exactly what it takes to land a customer. I know exactly what it takes to maintain that relationship. And I know exactly what you and I are risking when we are that general contractor. So if somebody else is going to assume that cost, that risk, I have no problem giving them a discount. One of my favorite instances was when we went out for storm response, which we still do, and we're still quite willing to travel on, because I think as me as an owner, when I hop in a loader or hop in a truck, I don't have any worries, right? Point me in the direction I got to go, and I'm going to do my work, and I'm going to collect my check at the end, and I'm good, man. All the other hassle is gone. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, or acquaintance of mine, I guess I'll paint it, and I both work for the same general contractor, and they were late on payment. This guy calls me up. He's a full-time firefighter, part-time snow guy. And he is ranting and raving, way past PG rated stuff. And I'm like, listen, man, what's the problem? He goes, those people didn't pay me, insert expletives. I says, well, did you call them? Yeah, but they're lying. They tell me the check's going to be in the mail at the end of the week, and then it's not. I said, okay. Have you ever not been paid before? No, everybody's always paid. Okay, well, welcome to the world. I said to him, are you concerned? You've been on this contract for 2 years. You've been paid every single time. This is the first time that it's going wrong. And this happens a lot with aggregators, right? If we background search your company, if you background search my company, background search Case, you're going to find all these stories on the internet, right? Oh, I didn't get paid. I didn't get paid. So I said to him, did you use the app? Yeah. Did you report on it? Yeah. Okay. Well, you're going to get paid. Unless they go out of business, you're going to get paid, right? If you followed the rules, you get paid. Sure, it's late. It sucks. So in the end, 9 months later, I get paid. He doesn't. He gets paid 10 months later, right? So going into the next season, I restructured my contract with this GC, and I said, listen, I just want to get paid up front. I'll service as long as the payments continue. You do that for me for a season, and I'll keep working for you. I'll consider it something that just, it happens, right? The other guy doesn't work for that company anymore. So he lost out on that business. I mean, you're in business, man. Stuff happens. Somebody dies, the internet goes down, COVID hits, stuff's going to happen. But if you do your job right, you get paid. You hear all these horror stories. I'll give you another example, a concrete one. It's not a person that's in the room. Case Snow Management. Everybody knows the name in the industry, right? We took on a bunch of sites for them 4 years ago. Took it on a 1-year contract, non-renewable, etc. We did a pile of work for them out of the blue. We had done a little bit here and there, but we took on about 700% more sites for them in 1 year. It's a big risk. Got to the end of the season, the only thing we hadn't been paid for on time was an add-on mid-season that wasn't properly documented. Fast forward a year, I called Jason Case himself. I got the number from the VP. And I said, Jason, listen, I haven't gotten paid for this. I need the bill satisfied. It's $5,500, right? Nothing huge, but it's money. To his credit, he said, listen, we had some issues with the customer. We had some back charging, things like that. I said, yeah, but was it on my sites? And to his credit, he says, no, it wasn't on your sites. I said, okay, so you've been paid for what we did. Yep. I said, okay, well, it's time to pay the bill. And he did. Now, if you search online, there's all kinds of stories about Case FMS, right? Good, bad, and indifferent. But as a subcontractor, what I would say, if you do your job right, according to the rules of the contract, by and large, you get paid. Same in construction.
Yeah,
if you do the job right, you get paid.
I would say it's the same in my business. You're going to see those same reports. Mm-hmm. And here's what I would here's what I would preface that with. Anytime that we self-perform the work, we're going to see about a 2% failure rate. That's what we see internally. So we're going to fail on jobs. We're going to miss a sidewalk. We're going to run over some bushes. We're going to miss a part of the parking lot that should have been salted. Like these things just happen, right? But to the wrong person, running over some bushes because it happened something that actually happened last year, right? Like, you know, they're furious. I got to make it right. 10% of the time when you subcontract, the subcontractors are going to fail. That's 10%, right?
Five-fold increase.
Right. So 10%, you're going to have service failure. So like if in our business, we were to run 7,000 subcontractors across a 12-month cycle, you include snow and land because they fail about the same. That would mean that 700 subcontractors would fail in a given season year after year. That's not showing up. That's doing the job right. That's cutting a corner. So that's 700 people that you have to deal with. Now you can imagine that about 10% of that group that failed is going to end in some sort of lawsuit. Whether it be a construction defect claim on our end, which we have to go out and pursue the contractor against, or whether that contractor is saying, I'm going to sue you because you didn't pay me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality of being a general contractor. 90% of those guys are going to do a phenomenal job, an excellent job. They're going to show up on time. 90% of those guys are going to get paid every single dollar on time or earlier than what they had even planned or budgeted. Because the goal is to pay 10 days early on every single thing. Like the goal is to always pay early. But you're never going to hear on any social forum, anywhere in the world, in any review, I got paid early and it was amazing to work with those guys. Mm-hmm. You're only going to hear from the 10%. And sometimes it's about 0.5%. That failure of that 10% is on us. An example would be, hey, here's a list of site maps and somebody put a 0 in front of every single zip code and now everybody is like one street off or something, right? Or somebody put a 0 in front of a number and it's like everybody just serviced the wrong site. Wait a minute. We told you it was Bank of America. Why'd you service the AutoZone? Well, that's because the address said.
Yep.
Right? Why didn't you call? What are we doing here? Well, I still need to be paid.
As a perfect example, that case illustration I brought up, gas station that had a McDonald's across the street. The site map said it was a public street. Turns out the gas station owned it. So the adjustment mid-season was start plowing the street, right? Simple site map got off. I'm sure based on this customer, who shall remain nameless in the conversation, they have over 60,000 sites nationwide. I'm sure the person that was drafting the site maps was doing the best job that they could.
Yep.
They got it wrong. It happens. But where I see the issue, and returning back to a statement you made earlier about don't like aggregators, you know what I don't like? I don't like when we don't talk to each other as men. Yep. So going back to we're all adults, let's act like them. Let's take responsibility for our own failures. Internally, actually, our incident rate on the construction side is higher than what you quoted. But we also own our issues when they happen. The way I tell it to customers is I would rather have you mad at me because I'm telling you that we screwed up than ever have you find something that was hidden. We hire and fire over it.
I believe the same way. I think in the trades, any trade, no matter what it is tough. Everybody has failure. Everybody has misses. It's just the nature of the beast. But it's about taking ownership, right? And I think that's what it comes down to. Like I am happy to work with an aggregator company. I am happy to work I'm happy to do any work, but I want to do the work on the precipice that this is a beer and a handshake relationship. And the minute we have to go to the contract, the minute we have to say the contract says our relationship is over. Like I don't want to do business anymore. Like it's just done, right? Like the minute we go there, The minute that trust is gone, relationship is gone, and we're into the finite details. You're going to take care of me. I'm going to take care of you. That's the way that it has to be. If you didn't show up, own it, make it right, take care of it. That's what it's all about. And I think that's my issue on any side of the platform. Right? I have screwed things up. But my goal has always been take care of the ownership on my end. I'll give things away for free when I screw them up. Right? I screwed up a parking lot for a customer. Put in the wrong pavement. It was just a simple accident. Yeah, I ended up seal coating the lot for free. And I just said, yeah, the job's on me and the seal coat's done.
Mm-hmm.
Take ownership of it,
but
right?
Guess what? That guaranteed that customer calls you back.
Yeah, they do for sure. And you do a lot more work with them, but you have to take ownership. And that's the thing, is that I think that's the thing. And I guess that's where the passion about it comes, right? Like you said earlier, like, oh man, you're passionate about this. You gotta crawl under your skin for this. But I think it's because I want, and I can't control what anybody does, but I think when you are a business owner, you take ownership. When you're a father, you take ownership. When you're a leader, you take ownership. When you're a church elder, you take ownership. No matter where you are, you take ownership, right? I have to wake up every day and I have to say, based on my actions today, would my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ be happy with what I did? Or did I fall short?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to fall short like 5 days a week. I'm going to get like 2 right? So like, I know I got to say, okay, I got to say, Lord, have mercy on my soul. Like forgive me of this, forgive me of that. But I can do better. But I can do better. But I can do better.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Kevin's fault.
I screw up enough on my own. If return back to something you just said, if you are pointing out clauses in the contract, not only have you lost the trust, but you've also lost the relationship and the purpose of doing business together. You're not entering, you can do business with anybody. I tell people on the construction side all the time, because I work for people I want to work for. We purposely restrict our growth because we want to work for people that are like-minded. We don't want to work for just anybody. There's a whole book of business I could take on the construction side that would make my numbers look amazing. But I'd be working for people that philosophically I'm just too different from. And I'm sure you have people like that on your end as well.
Yeah.
You're saying there's certain companies you just don't work for. But when it comes down to that beer and handshake thing, what builds that, what makes that work, and what makes it work with a subcontractor, what makes it work with a GC, what makes it work with a facility owner, is when you talk out those tough things. Yep. When you take ownership of it, but you also have accountability to not say, we got to go back to clause 8.4. But you say, you know what? You're right. Regardless of whether or not this is something that I can lean on contractually, it's the right thing to do. And those are the kind of people that call you back. Those are the kind of people that talk more than the internet does to tell their friends, right? I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, we're at a bank. One of my guys backs into a drive-through pillar. Pine cladding over steel core, doesn't damage the core, just destroys the cladding. The biggest compliment I got the entire season was from the account rep, who said, I cannot believe you called me before the bank did. Because as soon as the driver reported it, I'm on the horn and I'm like, listen, man, you need to know that this storm's coming. We got it handled. Structurally, you're okay. Lay it all out. But I'm going to tell you right now, we screwed it up, and here's our action plan. This is how we're going to make it right. And what I found in life, because I screw up a lot, and if you're a new business owner happening to listen to this, take this lesson, if nothing else. You have to own your problems, because they're always smaller than when other people discover them. If you take ownership of whatever the problem is, it gets instantly minimized, and your credibility goes up. It goes up even more when you restore something better than what was there before. In the case of this drive-through, if you and I drove by it, there's one amazing looking clad pillar, and there's 14 crappy looking ones, because the one we restored, we did it better than what was there before.
I love it.
But now that account rep will call me every time, right? And we had serviced that site 84 times that season, and we hit it once. But he doesn't remember the one time. Yeah. He
I was
doesn't
just
remember
kidding.
the one time that we hit it. He remembers the 84 times that we did it right. And he remembers that phone call,
Yep.
right? If you take ownership of something, it instantly minimizes. You diffuse the situation. And more importantly, you're earning more business from your client, more trust
Excuse me.
from your client. And if
Yeah.
nothing else in this industry, in any industry, your name is everything, your reputation is everything.
That's right. I'm a believer in everything you just said. Listen, we have had a great show. I think this is one of the longest shows in the history of shows. We're at 71 minutes, but it's been a great
Are
show.
you
It's been
kidding
a
me?
great
Wow, really are.
conversation. Yeah, it's been a great show. Listen, I got two final questions. We got to bring this thing in for a landing. One,
Sure.
anybody who's out there looking for great snow removal in your region, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, they can hop on either one of our websites, AdirondackCustoms.com or BisonServices.com. They can find me on Facebook, Instagram, any of the socials under Bison FMS. You can find me on LinkedIn under my name or underneath Bison FMS. And if you want to drop us a phone call, hop on the website. The number's there.
All right. If you're looking for a great snow provider to take care of your property, hook up with my man, Kevin. These guys do a phenomenal job. Every report always comes back that their work is really, really great. I've been hearing that for years. So if you're out there, give them some work, give them a shot. These guys are going to do fantastic. And if you're out there and you're in the snow industry or you're in the trades and you want to follow somebody who's a honest, hardworking father of four, Christian, and owner of multiple businesses, a CSP from SIMA, if you want to follow a great guy, how can anybody follow you? Is it Facebook is good, LinkedIn is good? Where is the best place to follow you personally?
LinkedIn, 100%.
LinkedIn.
I heard you, the businessman's Facebook, right? We're sharing about real topics and real discussions. And I'm an open book. Anybody's listening today and I happen to have some insight for you, hit me up. Happy to share anything I've learned.
All right. Get with my brother Kevin over there. And then finally, my favorite question. We've got a big whiteboard, a big billboard. It's on the side of the road. You can share one thing with the world. What do you want to share with the world today?
Don't ever give up.
Don't ever give up.
Don't ever give up, because if there's one thing that God has taught us is that even though we may walk completely opposite, he never gives up on us. So don't give up on yourself.
I love that. Super, super powerful. This has been an amazing show. I've had so much fun. I've learned so much. We've had such a great conversation. Felt like it was like 15 minutes. I know Ralph is sitting back there stressing, but you know what? We're having a great time. This has been the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott. 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every Tuesday. We are live and we are having fun. If you like this show, give us a like, give us a share, drop your comments into the comment box. Thank you so much for hanging out with us for 74 minutes. That was awesome. Kevin, great seeing you. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate this, man.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.